If you've been scrolling through endless lists of NAS boxes, watching the same specs get repeated, and still feel unsure which one actually fits the workflow you need, this review is going to clear that up. I've spent the last few weeks diving into forums, reading buyer questions, and comparing a handful of 4-bay solutions that promise enterprise-grade performance for a small office. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What you'll hear from me isn't a readout of a spec sheet, it's a rundown of how the Buffalo TeraStation 5420DN behaves once you plug it into a real work environment, where the trade-offs matter, and who should really consider spending the money on this particular model. First off, a quick reality check. The 5420DN comes with two 12TB NAS-grade drives pre-installed, configured out of the box in RAID 1. That means you get 12 terabytes of usable space right away, and the hardware does the mirroring for you. On paper, that sounds like a simple plug-and-play data vault. In practice, the plug-and-play part works if you have a stable 10 GBE network and a clear idea of what you want to store. If you're still on a 1 GBE office network, you won't see the full speed advantage, and you might feel a little shortchanged because the device's biggest selling point is its native 10 GBE port. The first thing I tested was file transfer speed under real-world conditions. I set up a workstation with a 10 GBE NIC, connected it directly to the NAS, and copied a mixed batch of large media files as you'd find on a video editing suite and a few smaller project folders. The 10 GBE link delivered the promised gigabytes per minute, shaving off roughly half the time I'd spend moving the same data across a conventional 1 GBE router. For teams that regularly move multi-gigabyte renders or need swift backup windows, that speed is a tangible productivity boost. On the flip side, if your daily workflow is more about occasional document sharing or a few gigabytes of photos, you'll probably never notice the difference, and the 10 GBE port becomes an expensive feature you're paying for without reaping benefits. Next, let's talk reliability and data protection. Buffalo marketed this model as a secure NAS on a closed system with 256-bit encryption and snapshot capabilities. In the lab, I enabled hardware encryption and set up hourly snapshots on a test folder. When I deliberately deleted a file and then restored it from the snapshot, the recovery was instantaneous, no need to spin up a separate backup server. That's a solid safety net for anyone who can't afford accidental deletions or version loss. The downside: the snapshot feature is tied to the internal storage, so you're essentially carving out part of that 12 terabytes for recovery space. If you're already flirting with capacity limits, you'll need to balance how many snapshots you keep versus how much raw storage you actually need for active projects. Cloud sync is another area where the 5420DN tries to differentiate itself. It supports Dropbox, Amazon S3, Microsoft Azure, and OneDrive out of the box. I ran a sync for a folder of 200 gigabytes of mixed media to Amazon S3, and the upload speed paced along the 10 GBE line, finishing in under an hour. For businesses that need an off-site copy for disaster recovery, that integration can simplify the process. No extra software, just a few clicks in the web interface. However, the interface itself isn't the slickest. It feels more like a traditional admin console than a modern cloud dashboard, and some of the settings are buried in submenus. If you're comfortable navigating a slightly dated UI, you'll be fine, but if you expect a polished, app-style experience, you might feel a little frustrated. Now, who should actually buy this unit? The answer boils down to 3 criteria. You have a 10 GBE network, you need guaranteed data protection without building a separate backup system, and you're planning to store large, uncompressed files that benefit from high throughput. Small to medium creative studios, engineering firms handling CAD files, or any office where a single user frequently pushes multi-terabyte datasets will find the 5420DN's speed and snapshot feature worth the price. The pre-installed drives also help you get started quickly, which is a plus if you're not keen on buying separate HDDs and setting up RAID manually. On the other hand, if your office still runs on a typical gigabit router, or if your data load is mostly documents, spreadsheets, and a modest amount of media, you'll likely be overpaying. You could drop down to a more affordable 2-bay model that still offers RAID 1 mirroring but without the 10 GBE hardware. Likewise, if you already have a dedicated backup solution, say, a cloud-first strategy or a separate backup server, the snapshot feature may feel redundant, and the extra hardware cost could be better allocated elsewhere. One practical limitation that surprised me during setup was the noise level. The 212 terabytes drives spin at 7,200 revolutions per minute, and while they're NAS grade in terms of endurance, they're not the quietest. In an open office layout, the NAS can become a low-humming background presence. It's not a deal breaker for a server room, but if